But today we're going to be looking at Romans, right? Really looking at this genuine love that Paul is going to talk about. So if you can, please join me in prayer as we really seek God's words, Jesus' love for today. So Jesus, we just thank you again for continuing to be the shining example of what true love is, what genuine love is. And so we just pray that we're able to see your love through these scriptures, and we're able to just open our hearts to you more and more, that we can receive that love that you're offering and receive it in a way that we can't help but want to share it with others. So we just seek you today more than ever, and we just seek that love more than ever. And so we just pray for the message today. We pray this in your wonderful name, Jesus. Amen. So today we're going to be looking at Romans chapter 12, verse 9 through 13. So the verses are there on the handout. If you can just read it with me. It says, "Let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality." And so we see Paul starts us off with, he's commanding us to love. And then he's kind of giving you these descriptions of what it looks like. Right? And so what we really want to understand is, what is genuine love? What does that really mean? We talk about love all the time. Sometimes, some people say that word's overused. We throw it around all the time. And it's like, what is genuine love? And for us as Christians, we understand that genuine love is Christ-like love. There's no better love. There's no higher standard. Christ-like love is what is genuine love to us. And so many of us may have seen it. Some of us have not. Some of us are still wondering, what does that really look like? And what can it really do? Can genuine love really change things? Can it really break down walls? Can it break down barriers that we don't think is possible, right? And so to me, I've read these verses many times, and I've always wondered that, right? I was like, can love really work, right? I'm always talking to Jesus. Obviously, I'm a fighter, I'm a warrior, and I was like, does love really work? Can it change, right? And so Jesus had to really keep working on this, keep reminding me. When I read these verses, there's one episode of my life that comes up where I really saw this happen, right? And really kind of lit a fire where it's like, I will never doubt whether true, genuine, Christ-like love works. So for me, the last place I worked before coming to pastor was in Colorado. Right, I moved there. I was actually stationed here in the Bay Area in Mountain View, working for the Army, and it went terribly. Right, I wanted to make some changes. I wanted to fight this evil system that I knew was going on, and I hit a brick wall. Right, I was very successful in my career. Most people warn me not to try to go make changes. They're like, that is a well-established thing, right? And it's like, with Christ, anything's possible. I'm gonna change it, and I hit a wall that I've never felt before. Right, and so as I went against that evil, I basically fought them to a draw, right? They got some victories, I got some victories. After I left, eventually God would punish them for their evil. They got caught doing what they were doing, and they would get punished, right? But it didn't bring me any vindication. It didn't bring me any type of restoration. I just knew that what God had promised, right, that evil people will be stopped. So after that time, I was like, God, I was praying, right? I was like, Jesus, send me to, I wanted to have one last time with the Army, go to a good place, be recharged, walk away with a positive mindset out of it. And so I was like, Jesus, please send me to a place that I can be poured into, right? I can be surrounded again by all my brothers and sisters, that we love each other the right way, right? I came from the group that just looked out for themselves, right? They broke the bonds of family, and they're like, it's tough, so let's just look out for ourselves. And so I was like, Jesus, please send me to a place I need that, right? I need to be built back up. And so that was my prayer. And so he sent me to Colorado. Little did I know that I was going to a place that was in very, very bad shape, right? So this group that I went to, they were building an airfield in Wyoming, right? They're from Colorado, but we were building something for the state of Wyoming. So these guys were supposed to build an airfield in 2 months. After 3 months, they were only 30% complete, right? They wasted all the money, all these resources, time, like they fell flat hard, right? And so everybody was really upset, right? All kinds of, it was just this huge fiasco. And the biggest problem, my job is we're the project managers, right? We're the ones that supervise and basically lead the process of building. So they took all the blame, and they deserved it. And the problem was because they were all out for themselves, right? They were all competing against each other. They were all trying to, be the best to get promoted, all this other stuff. And so it's like because they were fighting against each other, like they just could not succeed, right? Like that, the job we do is meant to be a team, right? We work together, and then we have hundreds of people work under us. So when they're divided, they're split up, they're going for their glory. Everybody was, and it just fell apart. So when I got there, I was like, I heard what happened. I saw it, and I was like, man, why would God send me to this place, right? I was like, why? I was like, I did not need this right now. Like my hope was already like cracked, right? It was fractured after what happened. I was like, I needed something to put it back together. And so as I'm there, I'm like, all right, well, I'm here. There's no getting out of it. I was like, Jesus, I see what's going on here. And I was like, I'm not the one that can help, right? And I was like, only one that can help is you right now, right? I was like, if you take the lead, if you're able to really take a hold of this, I believe they can change and they can do what's right, right? And so I was like, I'm one of the main leaders. I was like, Jesus, I need your help to help me lead them, right? Because I was a pretty competitive dude in many ways. I'm consider myself what's called a competitive Christian, right? We try to sharpen each other. We go really hard to everybody gets better. And so I started asking, I was like, but my worry was, is my version of competitive Christianity enough for them? Because they're already competitive as it is, right? And so it's like, will they see the nuance of we're still a family, we're still working to all build each other up? And so I was like, Jesus, I need your help, right? I need your protection, that I don't go too wild or too crazy, that I find the ways to lead them. And so I was like, Jesus, I'm just going to look at your examples of what you said to be a leader, right? And I'm going to trust that this promises work, right? That you fight evil with love, right? You fight evil with good. And so I submitted myself to be that servant type leader. I try to put their needs above my own, right? I kept trying to do what Jesus taught. And so I would tell them that, right? Like, hey, we're one family. We got to look out for each other. We got to be one. We got to leave all that stuff behind. And so I used to do things like anytime somebody got stuck working late, right? Normally you're supposed to get off at 5. Most of the time, there's always these last minute things that come. There's bad leadership all around, but basically they would pick one team and be like, all right, you guys are going to stay an extra 4 or 5 hours to finish the job. The other 2 can go home, right? So this would just always happen. You'd rotate over and over. Like you'd have plans, you'd do all this stuff, and then all of a sudden you get this last minute, bam, everything has to drop. You cannot say no. And so my thing was like, hey, it's going to take them 4 or 5 hours because there's only 4 of them. But if all 12 of us stay together and work on it, we could basically be done in an hour. And I was like, and they're like, why would I do that? I could be home at 5. And I was like, yeah, but what happens in a couple of days when it's your turn, right? Like you're going to have to now stay 4 or 5 hours and all this stuff. And so I was like, but if we're a family, like, we should be able to stick together, not go home until all of us go home, right? So I wouldn't force them. I'd be like, I'm going to stay, right? And so I would work, and that's what happened, right? We just more and more people kept staying, and that's how we handled things. It was like we would just all go at once, right? We would hit every task together. And so these guys were like, man, this is really good, right? And so we started saying like, hey, our lives are getting better. And so I was telling them like, yes, you must approach it like we're one family, right? And so some of them, they still question it like, does that really work? And so they're like, I got to be home with my kids. I got to be home with my wife. They would always bring that up, right? And they're like, I got to love my family. And I was like, yes, you do. I'm not saying you can't love your family, but you can't forsake your family here, right? And I told them, when you're in a war zone, your family can't do nothing for you. Your wives, your kids, they don't exist out there. They can't help you. They can't love you. They can't talk to you, right? I was like, you are on your own. And I was like, the only way you're going to come back is based upon the strength of all your brothers and your sisters there, right? The bonds you share, the way you look out for each other, the way you support each other, the way you pick each other up, that's the way you come back home to your family, right? So that's what I was telling them. I was like, love your family as best as you can while we're here, but you have to pour into this family to make sure you come back to your family, right? And so as they understood that, I told them, like, because some of the guys that have been overseas, they understood that, and they told them the same thing, right? And so, but it's kind of hard to believe until you really understand the sacrifice that means. And so, I would tell them, like, every one of us is sacrificed to be away for our family. So that's why we actually become a family here, to make sure we're filling that gap. And so they would say, like, okay, well, can we believe you? But we're going to see. We're going to watch every action that you do to see. Do you really love us like your family? And so one day, after about 1.5 years pouring into these guys, I was getting ready to do this huge training for them, right? We were getting ready to go to Afghanistan. Everything's getting real for us. And so I lobbied my leader to really give them this hardcore training to really be ready. Like this can be a culmination of what we've been doing for the last 6 months prepping. And so my leader's like, all right, like everything was set, right? I was like, all right, I'm getting ready to sleep. I got to get a good night's rest to teach these guys. And then my brother calls me at 3 a.m. Hey, our dad's been shot in an armed robbery, shot in the head. Right? He's with the doctors right now. We don't know what's going to happen. I can't give you any clarity. You know, he's like, I know I'm not supposed to call you unless we have like a definite answer because there's nothing you can do where you're at. But I just felt like it's wrong not to tell you that what's happening right now. And so, you know, he's like, I can't give you an answer until probably maybe 4 or 5 hours. Right? I'm supposed to be at work at 5:30 basically. And so I was like, I was going to have to go to work without knowing what happened. And so I'm like, all right, thanks for calling me. I was like, call me tomorrow whenever you know. Just leave a message if I don't answer, right? Like I can't just answer the phone whenever I want in the Army. And so I was like, just leave a message. I'll check it when I can, and then I'll call you back. And so as I hang up with him, right, I'm like, man, I gotta go back to sleep, right? I gotta get ready. And so obviously I can't sleep, right? All these things are running through my head. I'm worried about my dad. And so I had to show up to work at 5:30. I lead my guys through a workout, right? And I was a hardcore workout. I was working out my aggression, right? I was angry. I was just like, man. And so all the guys were like, man, what's wrong with Joaquin? Like this dude just like punished us, right? But I was trying to stay like my mind focused. And so as I went to shower, went to breakfast, and then I got to go to work at 9, right? And so I'm trying to get my mind right. And then all of a sudden I can see my brother calling. And I'm like, I just silenced it. And I was like, oh, if I take this, I don't know what's going to happen, right? I don't know what the answer is on the other end of that call. And so as I'm sitting there, I was like, I know I got to do this training. So I just basically talked to God. I was like, God, what do I do right now? I was like, obviously I don't know. Obviously I'm worried. I was like, but I also know the danger of not teaching these guys, right? Because like, if I go home or if something happened to my dad and I got to go, then they're not going to get this training, right? We won't get it in time before we got to go, and they won't have time to practice it before we go. And so I was like, what do? I don't have the strength to just block out what's going on. And so God kind of reminded me. He was like, what would your dad want? And I've shared before, my dad loves soldiers, right? He loves them. He trained me my whole life to take care of them, to be able to bring them back home. That's what he taught me. He didn't teach me how to fight. He didn't teach me how to do anything else. He taught me how to lead and care for them. And so I was like, that's what he taught me. That's what he cares about. I was like, I got to honor my dad and do this training, right? I was like, I got it because this is what he would want. It is what he would do. And so, I just prayed to God. I was like, give me the strength, right? Be there with me to do this. And so basically I showed up at 9 o'clock and I led the training. And it was a 5-hour-long training. We were just in it, asking questions, talking about bouncing ideas, everybody. Right? There's about 12 of us. We went for 5 hours straight. I know the youth are probably like, dang, we thought he talked a long time on Friday nights for 30 minutes. Trust me, I got more. I can go for 5 hours. So just be waiting. It's coming. No, just kidding. All right. So, but in this time, right, I did the 5 hours straight. And all these guys, they didn't know anything that was going on. And so afterwards, when we finished, right, everybody was excited. Everybody was like, man, like we're really going to be ready for what's coming next. And so as we're finished, right, I taught them like, hey, anytime we have to skip lunch, anytime we have to miss things, let's go out and eat as a family, right? Like let's all go together, eat, celebrate, have fun. And so they were like, oh man, like, this is great training. Like, oh, King, let's go eat. And I was like, oh, I can't today, right? I was like, I can't. I was like, I got to take care of something. And so I didn't tell them what it was, and they're like, okay. And so, so part of this training, one of the things I taught them was like, notice the changes of behaviors, right? If anybody ever changes their behaviors, you must identify it very quickly, investigate it. Because over there in the world that we live in, it's like usually a change in behavior means something bad's about to happen, right? So it's like you must like key in on it, every little detail. So that's what I was ingraining them in that lesson. And so as they left, as I turned down lunch, right, I went off to the side in the back of this warehouse building that we worked in, and I checked my phone. I saw the message from my brother. Our dad's okay, right? Like the bullet bounced off his skull, they scanned his brain. They did everything. His hearing, no hearing loss, no brain damage. The bullet just bounced off his head and went into the ceiling. So they did the x-rays. You can see the impact of it. He was missing a piece of his flesh on his head. But other than that, he was 100% fine, right? And so I'm like, so as I'm reading that, obviously I'm happy, but man, I just started crying. Right? I was like, like those tears of joy, tears of just all kinds of things. I was like, I was not ready for that, right? I did not anticipate that kind of loss. Everybody's thinking about me going away, right? And so it was kind of it just wasn't something I prepared for. And so as I'm crying, as I'm thanking God, as I'm talking to him, all of a sudden, all the soldiers came back. All 12 of them came back. And they see me crying like, Joaquin, what happened? I'm like, no, like, don't look. Right? Like I'm trying to hide my tears, right? They're like, what's going on? I was like, what are you guys doing back? And so they're like, you told us to watch for changes of behavior, right? And they're like, you skipping lunch was the biggest red flag we've ever seen, right? Like, you never miss lunch. You never not go out with us. Like, what's happening? And so as I told them, I was like, well, my dad just, I just got, last night my dad got shot, and so I was waiting on the news. And so all of them are shocked, right? They're like, what the heck? Like, how come you didn't just postpone training? How come you didn't tell us and try to work on that? And I was like, I told you guys we're a family, right? I was like, I can't love one differently. I love you all the same. And so I was telling them, I was like, I knew this was important. I knew this, our lives are on the line. That's why they paid attention for 5 hours, because they also knew that this is what was going to help save their lives, right? That's why they were, paying attention for 5 straight hours, because it was as real as it gets for them and for us and for me. And so that's what I was telling them. I was like, I couldn't not do that, right? And so I told them, I was like, even my dad would not let me do that. It's like if I knew my dad was survived, right, he would be mad if I didn't do the training, because when I call him, he'd be like, what? You were worried about me? You thought I could be taking it? That's what I said. My dad's very hard-headed. That's why that bullet bounced off. But that's where it's at. Like, that's who he was. He'd be like, I can't believe you worried about me, right? Like, you should know God's got me. That's who he was. And so all my friends were laughing. They're like, what kind of dad is that, right? And so afterwards, so we went to go eat, and they're like, man, tell us about your dad, right? And so all of a sudden, now I'm telling them all these stories, telling them about who he was, because they want to know who's this guy that the bullet just bounced off his head, right? And so at the end of this day, it went from being the scariest day to like one of the most joyful days I've ever had. Because now these guys really understood that we were one family, right? Like, they were there for me in my moment of need. They were there to pick me up. Like, it was just this super joyful time. And so when I got home that night, after hanging out with them, I didn't just get on my knees to pray. Man, I was laying flat. And I was like, Jesus, I can't believe what you did. I can't believe the hearts that you changed. I can't believe the group that you just made. Because these dudes were, like I said, they were hard-headed. They come from a lot of bad backgrounds. If you would have met them, you would not think very highly of them, right? That's just who they were. But that's where it was kind of like God's love, Christ's love, changing them, being poured on them, right? They completely changed. They went from being this super competitive group that didn't care about each other to now being there for each other every single moment, right? And so I was just like, Jesus, I prayed to be in a place that would help build me up and help bring back that faith, bring back that hope. And I was like, and you're the one that did it, right? You took me to a place that didn't have it yet because you were going to be the one to show me how your love changes everybody, right? So it was like you built in a new level of hope that went way beyond what I even thought, right? And so I was like, you didn't answer my prayer in a way that you sent me to a great place right away. You sent me to a place that you would be able to show how great your love is, how powerful it is. Right? So that's why I just was praying. I was like, Jesus, your love is beyond what I ever thought. What you can do, what your love, what your true, genuine love is, it can break anybody down. It can break their heart and build them into something that is what they were always meant to be, right? Like our Father in heaven. And so that's where I was like, Jesus, I want to commit my life to loving like you all the time, right? I did it as best I could, but I did it not knowing that it was going to work. Now I know 100% it works. And now I'm even more convicted to keep loving like you do. And that's what we're going to talk about. This genuine love, where it's like, if it's Christ-like love, it will do beyond what you ever thought possible. And this is where it's kind of like, but we have to look at what Jesus, Christ-like love is to really understand what it is and how to share it. All right? Because we don't want any type of artificial, half-level version of it. We want the real deal, because that's what's going to do something. And so the first thing that we're going to look at with Paul when he's talking about love be genuine, he says, love one another with brotherly affection. Right? This is the principle that Paul always kind of reiterates and talks about. You have to love everyone like they are family. You'll see a lot of Paul talk about like Timothy as his kids. He talks about all these things. I love you as a mother. Like he always uses family illustrations. But it's important to understand that Paul is pulling from Jesus. Right? So most of the things that we're going to look at today is Jesus. What was his type of love? And so Jesus loved everyone like family. And so I have a lot of, we're not going to read every single one, but these are there for you to read later. But basically the first version, when we're trying to understand, did Jesus love everyone like family? One of the main episodes is when he is speaking to everybody and his mother and brother are trying to talk to him. Right? So somebody says, hey, your mother and brother are outside. And he responds, who is my mother and brother? All these people here that are seeking the will of my Father, these are my family. Let them wait. And so when you read that story, if you think about it from our culture, imagine if you left your mom outside, right? You'd be considered a bad son or daughter, right? You're like, your mom's out there waiting. You're like, hey, mom, wait, be out in the cold. I'll take care of you when I get to you, right? Everybody like, oh my God, like, look what he's doing to his mom, right? Like, everybody like, oh, you should take care of your mom. I imagine if it was like a parent, right, they'd be telling all the other parents, like, can you believe my child left me outside? They'd be like, they would be exaggerating, like, it was raining outside, I was cold. Like, they would just keep going, like, my kids are so bad, pray for me. Like, pray for me, right? Like, that's how we would look at it, because we would always say we got to take care of our mom. And yet here we see Jesus saying, who's my mother? Who's my brother? Everyone that does the will of my Father. These people are seeking the kingdom. I'm taking care of kingdom business. My mother and brother, they got something personal to talk to me about. They can wait. Right? And that's what we're saying. Jesus' level of love. He was saying, people going after my Father, that's my family. So even as we keep building on what Jesus said, right? They ask him later on, Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? He says, you should love your God with all your heart, all your soul and mind. The second is love your neighbor as yourself. A lot of Christians, they have that, like, I love God, I love my family, I love people in the church. They have this hierarchy. Where is the hierarchy in Jesus' teachings? Where do you see him say you should love this person at this level? He basically says you're supposed to love everybody to the max. Love God with all your heart, soul, and then do the same with your neighbor. Now, many Christians have abused that and ignored their families. That's not what God ever said, and that's not what that text implies. Right? If you love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, imagine how you will love your wife or husband. Imagine how you'll love your kids, how you would love your brothers and sisters. Right? That's why he's saying, if you love if you love God first, then it'll take care of those others. If you love your neighbor as yourself, imagine the heart that it takes to forgive anybody, to be able to help them no matter what, right? All these type of things. Have mercy, grace. If you can love a stranger with that kind of love, how much more would your family benefit? Right? Because we know kids will test their parents, test that grace, test that mercy. So it's like if you can do it for a stranger, you'll be able to do it for your kids even more. Right? So that teaching is meant to say, like, if you can elevate your level of love to Christ-like love, everybody around you will benefit. Everyone. And even more so, imagine if you're teaching your kids to love everybody to the maximum level. Right? You're raising them to have that genuine love in their life, and you're raising them to want to share that same type of love. Does that make sense? That's what we're saying. Like, that's why those laws are there, because you're basically setting that example. If we love everybody to the max, that's what you're pouring into your kids. That's what you're pouring into your marriages, right? Your families, your brothers and sisters, all those type of things. And that's what we see. Like, there's not supposed to be a differentiation, because we're supposed to be loving to this highest level. And that's where Christ is saying, if we all love to the highest level, everybody's taken care of, including your family, including your kids, right? Everybody's looking out for each other. Everybody's now putting everybody first. And so this is why I said, if you're holding back, if you're only trying to focus on one group, what is that teaching? And so this is where it seems very bold to say this, and some people will be like, okay, I'm still hesitant. But guess what? What does John 3:16 say in the next? For God so loved the world that he gave up his only son. If we hold back for our families, if we hold back for our loved ones, how is that matching the same level of God? He said, Jesus is my only son. I'm giving him up for you because you're all my children. Right? That's the level of love that God and Jesus are bringing down. Every one of you is with us. Every one of you belongs with us. We will go all out. There is no differentiation. We will go out for everybody. And so that's what we're saying. What is the standard? What is the genuine love? That's it right there. Right? We talk about it. God is love. Yes, he has a specific standard. He has that full strength. And so if you look, we'll keep going, right? Keep Jesus' teachings. He shares this in Luke chapter 6, right? Luke chapter 6 is basically the Sermon on the Mount recorded by Luke. So that's what we're saying. It's still technically the Jesus' teachings. I like the wording a little bit better because it helps us see a little bit clearer of what he's writing. Because Matthew's more Jewish, it's more for a Jewish context. And so that's where it's a little bit different language. So Luke is more generalized for us. If you look at the very bottom, the second half of it, it says, if you love those who love you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to get back the same amount. But love your enemies and do good and lend, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great. And you will be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. Be merciful even as your Father is merciful. And that's what we're saying. God is elevating it. Everybody loves their family, right? For the most part. I was joking around on Friday where it was like, even Hitler loved his wife. Even Hitler loved his kids. Even Hitler loved his mama. Doesn't make him a good person. Doesn't make him, right? We know what he is. We know there's a lot of evil people that love their family and try to give them everything. So how can Christians be any different if we just love our families? We love those that are good to us, those that will help us, those that will be like, hey, when you're in need, I'll give you something. We're the same as everybody else. We're not loving like Christ. Does that make sense? That's what Christ is trying to say. You got to go beyond what everybody does. You got to go beyond what the world does, and you got to love like me. Everybody says love. Jesus wants you to love. Jesus wants you to love. That's not what he says. Jesus says love like me. Love like my Father. Right? Because that's what he says. Everything I do, I saw the Father do. And that's what we're trying to say. Jesus is saying love like me. We have to elevate when we talk about that genuine love. We're not just loving like we normally do. We are loving like Christ. And so, because that's really what happened for us, right? That's where if you read all of Paul's Romans, all these things, that's what he talks about. All of you were enemies. All of you were hostile against God. All of you were away from the family, but you were always family. And that's why we came for you. Right? And that's how, in reality, why we love every single person, whether it's good or bad, whether they're going to help us or they're because they really are blood. Right? They really are our brothers and sisters. We are all one. And that's what Jesus was dying to remind us, and that's what we have to go after. And so this is where it's not easy. Right? Obviously, there's a lot of human challenges. There's a lot of things where it's like, it's so natural to love the people that are around you. But to me, there's so many other people that understand this and go for it. Right? That's why I shared my story with soldiers. They're one that's very popular with that. But look at all the other fields that do it. Right? If you ever meet firefighters, that's what they do. Right? When they're in a fire, it is very dangerous and the building can collapse at any moment. You never know. But they're there trying to save people and risking their lives. But at the same time, they have a motto. If you go, we go. So it's like if one fire, the floor caves in or whatever happens and a firefighter's about to die, they'll try to reach and hold them. They will not let go. No matter if to save their lives, they're like, that guy's too heavy. He's got all that equipment, right? Those tanks. They will not let go. They train for that. They prepare. And they are willing to go with them. And that's why most of the time you see firefighters die in pairs. Because they know, I love you to the max. You go, we go. Does that make sense? They have that kind of commitment. You look at the medical people right now, right? Where everybody's celebrating nurses and people like that. Look at the stories that's like a lot of them have to quarantine, isolate from their families for 5 or 6 days, right? They don't see them for months at a time because they know people need care. So they're willing to risk. They're willing to be there for them, right? Be there for the people that are dying. And they try to be there for their families. But they're making sacrifices all the time. Does that make sense? And not all of them are Christian. That's what's crazy. A lot of them, they don't believe in the afterlife. They don't believe in anything, but yet they're giving up their life for those people because they have that pure level of love. I think, even missionaries, that's where I love reading the stories. A lot of the times around the Holocaust, right? Corrie ten Boom, they're hiding people, right? She loses her sister and her dad while they're trying to hide people. The dad dies during arrest. They say it's a heart attack. Who knows if he got beaten and he died, right? But her sister died in the concentration camps. There's a story called End of the Spear. It's a great movie too. The son asks his dad when he's getting ready to go to these Amazonian tribes, I know you have a gun, Dad. Will you kill them to make sure you come back to me? And the dad tells him, no. If I kill them, they don't have heaven. It ain't right. If I die, I have heaven. You'll see me later. But somebody can still evangelize them later. Right? And that's what I said. It's not easy. And like I said, for humans, it's impossible. But that's what we're talking about. But with Christ, it is possible because his love is flowing through us. We feel it. We share it. And that's where you start to see these people. If you have Disney Plus, there's a movie called Miracle at Midnight. Watch that. It's about people trying to smuggle them from, I believe, Poland into the Netherlands. Same story, right? They're like, we as Christians cannot watch these people being persecuted, killed, and not do anything. And so they risk trying to smuggle them, hide them. The father ends up losing his son. But that's what we talked about. The father wanted to show, because his wife, I don't know how true it is, because obviously it's a story. It's a movie, but the wife always asks those questions, right? Like, you're endangering our kids doing this. And the father says, we're endangering them by not having them do something. If we raise them to turn a blind eye and let evil happen, how are they Christians? How are they following Christ's words? Does that make sense? Because there's no greater love than to give one's life for one's brother or friend, as he wrote it. Right? So that's where he said, like, I got to teach my kids this is to live like Christ. That's the best lesson we can teach them. And if they die doing it, they're going to be in heaven. That's what I care about. Right? So that's what we're saying. Like, this level of love, there's a reason why. And that's where it said, people have understood this and followed it. And so for us, we have to understand, right? We're not going to just be able to walk outside and start doing this. But there's this mindset where it's like, if we stay ready, we don't have to get ready. Have you guys ever heard that saying? That's more of like a saying from the hood. But basically, it was kind of like, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Right? Most people know I got like snacks and goodies everywhere hidden in the church. Right? Why? Because if anybody ever is like, hey, Joaquin, I want to sit down. And, I need to talk. It's like, can we have a nice beverage I can open up with? I got everything ready. I got every type of coffee, drip coffee, French press, instant coffee. I got an espresso machine back there. I got the milk to do the lattes, right? If somebody's like, I drink tea. I got every type of tea. I got all the varieties. I got chai tea. I got the milk, same thing, chai lattes. Whatever somebody needs, I got. I stay ready. Does that make sense? I have all the food, meat, chicken. I'm learning tofu so I can eat with a vegetarian. I'm trying, right? That's why I'm looking at you guys to teach me a good recipe. That way I can eat with anybody. But that's how I look at it. If I'm going to be there for somebody, I got to be ready. I got to be actively going after them. And so that's why I said I'm pursuing Christ to help me be ready in every possible way. And so one of this, this is a biblical principle. This is in the stories, right? One of the stories we'll look at, does everybody know when Jesus fed the 5,000? Everybody know that story? Right? He uses 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish to feed them, right? Let me ask you guys something. Where did the 5 loaves and 2 fish come from? Did the apostles have it? Did they use the little money that they had and bought it and said, hey, this is all we can afford? Where did it come from? What was that? Who? Boy, yeah. All right, so if you read the first 3 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, it just tells you very quickly that they had 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish. Doesn't tell you where it came from. So most of us, we read the first 3 Gospels, we don't even think about it when we read it in the 4th Gospel. We just think it's the same story. But in the 4th Gospel, John actually tells you where the bread comes from. That's why it's on the handout. And I underlined it. It says, there is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they for so many? And so for the most, you have to think about this whole story, right? The full context of it. These people heard Jesus. They were following him. Jesus said, I need to go to rest. I'm going to go away. And they kept following Jesus over and over and over again, right? Jesus would pull away. They'd follow him and follow him. So they burned through all their resources. And that's why Jesus is saying, he's moved by compassion. Like, I need to feed them because they gave all this to follow me, right? None of them have anything. But there's this one boy who planned ahead and had enough fish and enough bread to always ensure he was fed while he was being fed spiritually by Jesus. Does that make sense? That's where I said, like, it's this funny little detail where it's like this one little kid brought enough food to make sure he never ran out. He made sure he had enough to be able to go after Jesus. And that's where we see he gives it up and Jesus is like, I'm going to split this up. Right? So that's what we said. Can Jesus pull out fish out of nowhere? Of course he can. I won't deny that. But don't you see what Jesus was using? He's showing us, even though everybody was giving up everything, this person stayed ready. Why does that kid have so much? He was going to share with others too, right? I don't imagine he was going to eat it all. Maybe but that's what we're saying. Like, this kid had enough. And so that's what we're trying to talk about. Like, Jesus' teachings, his writings, he was trying to say, like, if you stay ready, I'm going to work through you. Does that make sense? And so this is where I see that example. I always tell people, like, there's a second coming of Elijah. They talk about John the Baptist. Jesus is coming in the second coming. I always say, like, I love that little kid. I was like, that's going to be me. I'm going to be the second coming of the kid with the bread and fish. Right? Like, I'm always going to have things ready so that Jesus can just work through me. And so, but that's where, like, if you read all of Jesus' teachings, that's what he talks about, staying ready. So if you keep going through Matthew, right, it talks about the servant being faithful while he's anticipating his master coming back. You have the 10 brides staying ready, having the oil. And then you also have putting our talents to use, right? The guy that buried it didn't do nothing with it. The other ones were actively working. You see all this type of teachings about staying ready. And so it's important to understand that these are all basically chapter 24, 25. This is the ending of pretty much Jesus' teachings. And he ends it in the next section as you flip the back to it, where it was like, as we stay ready, we're supposed to seek out opportunities to love. And so as he now talked about staying ready, his next teaching in Matthew is about the final judgment when he comes back. And so he uses a story. When this king comes back, he's going to separate all the people like sheep and goats. And he's going to have the righteous and the unrighteous. And so real quickly it says, when he separates the righteous, he says, for I was hungry, you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you as a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, saying, truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. Right? So that's what we're talking about. Who is Jesus? Jesus himself is saying, I'm among all these people. These are all my brothers. Right? That's what we keep bringing back. Jesus is saying, if you help anybody that's sick, clothe anybody, help them, you're helping me, because these are my brothers. Right? So that's what we're talking about. Look at what Jesus taught. Look how he lived. He said every one of them, every person is his brother and sister. What we do for them, we're doing for him. Tell me where you see Jesus differentiate. Tell me where he says, I'm glad you took care of Christians and didn't help the other ones. He doesn't say that. Right? He's usually saying, the Christians are good. They're usually sick. Go help those that are sick. Right? Look at what he did when he came. All those things. I came to heal the sick. I came to those that are in need. Look at who Jesus said his family are. Look how he loved his family. There's other teachings where it was kind of like, you see a lot of them talk about that, where like you can see Christ in them. Think about it. If you ignore anybody, who are you really ignoring? If you ignore somebody in need, who are you ignoring? Jesus, right? Based on that teaching, is he not saying you ignore me? Because if you read the rest of that whole chapter, if you read the rest of that section, 25, 31 through 46, basically the people that are separated in the unrighteous area, that's what he tells them. You didn't feed me when I was hungry. You didn't clothe me. You didn't come to me when I was in prison. You didn't help me when I was sick. And they're like, wait a minute, Jesus, when did we would of course do it for you. And he's like, you didn't do it for the lowest of my people. You didn't do it for my brothers. You ain't my family. Does that make sense? That's why I said Jesus has some harsh words. He puts it on the line. That's why I said these are there for you to read fully. But that's what, think about it. He's saying, I'm there with those people. If you didn't help them, you didn't help me. And so that's what we're talking about. What is genuine love? We know what it is. He laid it out. And he tells us how to do the same. And so we're talking about this seeking out, right? So that's what we're talking about. Christians just can't be waiting. Christians can't be just saying, okay, when people come here. One of the things we talk, like Jesus, did Jesus just set up a tent in Galilee or Jerusalem or Bethlehem and say, hey, I'm the Savior of the world. If you want to be healed, come see me. Does not do that. He goes in circles, traveling around the land, right? If you understand, he did 3 years of missions, but it was 3 journeys that he took that were basically a circle. He went around 1 year, then he went around another year, then he went around the third year. Right? Same places over and over again, trying to constantly seek them out to show them, like, I love you. I will keep coming after you. And so as we see Jesus doing this, when we see the characters that watch Jesus do this, look at their reactions. Right? When Jesus is healing people, Jesus is dropping this wisdom about God. You see all these brothers go get their brother. How many pairs of brothers are there in the 12 apostles? Does anybody know? Does anybody know how many sets of brothers? Siblings? Come on, you guys should know. You'd be like, I'd get my sister just like that guy got her. No, nobody knows that. All right, there's 3 sets of brothers that we know of. James and John, Peter and Simon. I think it's Philip and Nathaniel, or it's Andrew and Nathaniel. I always mix it up. But basically, there's 3 sets of brothers that we know of. There's possibilities of actually a 4th pair. Depends on how you interpret it or how we're trying to put it together. But basically, there's 3 pairs of brothers. And every story goes, one brother saw him, and they're like, I better go get my brother. I got to go tell him what I just saw, and he needs to follow too. Does that make sense? Because one of the brothers, they were actually watching John the Baptist, and then they see John the Baptist baptize Jesus, see that everything, and they're like, man, I got to go get my brother. Right? Like they can't stop. They won't stop until their brother has it too. When you see Jesus healing people, there's a story where they bring a man that's a paralytic man on a bed. Right? In Matthew, it's just very simple. There's a paralytic man on a bed. Jesus heals him, and Jesus tells him, get up. You're healed. And so, like I said, some of them, they're going through these stories very quickly. But if you look, the story is retold in Luke, right? It's there on the handout too. They bring the paralytic man on a bed down the roof. So the story goes that these 4 brothers were like, we want him healed. And so they try to bring him to Jesus, right? Because he obviously can't walk and go to Jesus. Jesus is surrounded by all these crowds. They can't get through. And they won't be stopped. They're like, Jesus must heal our brother. This is what it's going to take for him to be healed. We got to get him to Jesus. And so they work their way up the crowd. They go to the top of the building and drop their brother down into Jesus' presence. Right? Unstoppable. And that's where Jesus looks up and sees them dropping him. And he's like, because of your guys' faith, you are all saved. Then that's what we're talking about. Like, that is genuine love. Those brothers, man, they were working out, trying to carry their brother around. Right? They were like, we will not be stopped till we get him to Jesus. And that's what we're talking about. That's genuine love. That's this type of love that Jesus, like, he acknowledges. It's like, yes, these people are getting it, right? That's what we're talking about. When you see the genuine love, when you feel it, you will not stop till they have it. And so this is what we said, like, we really have to understand, as we feel this love, we got to go seek out opportunities to love. Because that is pretty much the main point of the Great Commission at the very end. Right? It talks about they had doubts. They had doubts that they were going to be able to carry on the mission. Will they be able to carry on without Jesus? And that's what Jesus tells them. Don't worry. Right? Go out to all the nations and teach them about me. And it's done. Right? So that's why I say, like, everything about Jesus is like, he come out, seek. Right? That's what we talk about. He came in flesh. He came down to earth. Everything about him was like, I have this love. I'm going to go after them. And so if we're going to understand Paul's writings and try to go after it, then that's what it is. There's only one level of genuine love, and that is Christ-like love. And we understand his examples. We have all the text, all the writings to understand how to do it. So I'll end with just the applications for us, right? The first thing we got to do, thank Jesus for going all out and sharing genuine love with us. Right? That's what I shared in that story. Was like, I couldn't do anything else but just thank him. Right? And that's what we said. For us, whether you've 100% felt it, whether you know it and you're just waiting, like really wanting to feel it, thank him for it, right? Really spend that time thanking him for what you have, the people pouring into you, all the ways he's trying to reach you, right? Thank Jesus. Really build that in your life. I got to be thankful to what he's doing. And so as you're trying to thank him, pray to be more connected to his love. That's why I said that story that I shared, I was what, 27? Right? I shared. I was waiting to see that pure level of love. I like that song that you guys were singing, where it's like all the time you're working, all the time your promises are yes and amen. Right? It takes a while to see it, but it's always happening. Right? Jesus is always working, and so that's where it said, like, keep praying to see it. Keep praying to see it. That's where and it'll come. It just you got to keep praying for it. And so as you're praying to be connected to his love, pray for the strength to love people the way he would. That's why I said it is, for us as humans, we are taught one way. In this world, especially in every culture we're part of, right? We're taught how to love our family. We're taught how to take care of people, help, all these types of things. We're influenced in so many ways we don't even realize. And that's why I said it takes a lot to break it. And this is where Jesus is saying, like, it's on me to help you break it. Right? So if you connect to my level of love, you'll be able to share it. Because if you think about it, for us, most of us were like, I can't believe this person didn't get it after a day or a month or a year. Right? Jesus is like, I'm going to wait for people to 1 year, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I know how much they've been influenced. I'm going to be waiting for them. I'm going to love them, right, till they get it. And that's where it's kind of like we got to connect to Jesus to have that same type of conviction, same type of passion and desire. And so as we pray for that, read all of Matthew this next week. Right? So people talk about it. Most people forget a sermon after 5 days because most of the time they never apply it. So I have all those verses there. You can read that for this next week, right? You can simplify it a little bit. Keep reading about Jesus' love, how he talked about loving people to build up that desire. But I would suggest read Matthew. Read the whole book, right? Read it in a week. Be intentional in seeking that love. Because honestly, as you read it, if you read the whole book at one time, I guarantee you'll walk away saying like, man, Jesus is, man, the way, how did he do that? How did he withstand all these things? How did he withstand, like how did, especially when you read the ending, right, where what he's enduring at the end, how he kept loving people, how the people he loved turned on him, right? You'll just be like, man, he did not even give up. And you'll be like, man, I want that level of love. And honestly, if you read the whole book of Matthew right away, you'll probably want to binge read the other 3 Gospels. Same way you want to binge a K-drama or anime, right? You're like, first episode is so good, I got to watch it all one night. You'll be like, I got to read all the Gospels at once. Maybe, I don't know. That's how it is. That's how it's for me, right? But that's what we're saying. Dedicate to reading what he did. Understand what genuine love is, and then that's what we said. That stay ready mentality. You're like, I know what Jesus is saying. Be ready to share that love, right? Paul writes that either always be eager to share love. Like it'll all come together, and you'll start trying to prioritize, how can I love more? And so as you do that, spend some alone time with God, listening to how you can love people the most with the gifts, talents, and opportunities God has given you. We talked about that last week, right? The body, how we all have these different gifts. Paul writes extensively about it, but it's important to understand that the genuine love that you've received and that he's built you to give is on you, right? It's based on how you are, who you are. Even for me, like food's a big thing, but if you know my history, it makes sense, right? My mom's side, they all had restaurants, things like that. Like food is a very big thing for my family, my culture. And so I'm pretty much exactly what I was raised with. Does that make sense? I just turned it into Christ level. That's what he used. He used that foundation, the clay, and said, I'm going to make him into my cook, Jesus cook, all right? And so that's what we're talking about. But for you, explore what it means, what gifts he gave you, what talents. Right? And understand how you're going to share that genuine love. Obviously you can talk to the staff. People like, we can talk about it, look at experiences, look at what's burning on your heart. Like these people, right? So it's like, how do all those things connect? But the biggest thing is spending that alone time with God, listening. He knows how you can give it. He's going to line you up in the proper way. And so practical, write a new schedule to create more time to be able to serve and love others. This is a big thing where it's kind of like most of the time we're always behind schedule, we're procrastinating. And so when somebody needs help, we're like, I got this deadline or I have this thing coming up, right? If you really look at God's teaching, he's always like, do all these things first. That's how I've tried to rearrange my life. Like, let me do everything early in the week. So the rest of the week, my time is all free. Does that make sense? So if anybody ever needs help, I'm ready. I used to have a truck. Same thing, right? I used to rearrange my life all the way where it's like, I'm going to stay active, do all these things ahead of time. So that way I always have time for people. Same thing I did for those guys in the military. That was one of the tactics I taught them. You got to always be ahead of schedule to be able to help. If you're behind, you can't help somebody else because then you both become behind and then you both are going to get punished, right? And so that's what we're saying. Like as Christians, this be ready mentality, this seeking them out, being eager. It's like we got to prioritize. We have to sacrifice, right? That's what we're talking about. You have to give up some stuff to be able to do that. That's why I appreciate the worship team, right? The sacrifices. They're using the gifts and talents God gave them. They're sacrificing time, singing, practicing after church, all these type of things, right? They rearrange their schedules to help us worship our Father. Does that make sense? Help worship Jesus. And so I always appreciate what they do. And so but that's where every one of us, right? Whatever talent you have, whatever gift, you can line it up. God can line it up. He has a purpose for it. And so that last thing, pray over this schedule and seek God's guidance on changes and his will and desires. This is not meant to be how we can do better, how we can somehow do all these things. It's meant to be that we cannot do this on our own, but Jesus can. Jesus can be the one that fills us with that love. He's the one sharing it with us. He's the one that's going to help align everything about us because he knows everything about us. He knows why we were created. He knows all these type of things. And his wills, his desires, as we line it up, people will feel the genuine love because we are standing in his genuine love. All right, so I encourage you to look at those, read the scriptures, spend that time, right, and get your Jesus love on this week. That's all I can say, right? That's how we can end it. Get your Jesus love on.